Breaking news: stepfather, 71, who killed a toddler by swinging him into a fireplace in 1968 is found guilty of murder, after the dead boy's brother became enraged by a Facebook photo and revealed he witnessed the crime. A pensioner has been found guilty of murdering his toddler stepson almost 50 years ago. David Dearlove was seen attacking 19-month-old Paul Booth in 1968 by the little boy's brother Peter, then aged just 3, after he crept downstairs for a drink. But the killer avoided justice for decades until Paul's brother saw a faded photograph of the youngster being held by Dearlove on Facebook in 2015. He told his family what he remembered about the day of Paul's death, and police investigated and later arrested Dearlove. The 71-year-old denied killing the toddler at the family home in Haverton Hill, Stockton, telling the jury that the boy had suffered the fatal head injury by falling out of bed. But following the highly unusual trial at Teesside Crown Court, he was found guilty today and faces a life sentence. There was no visible reaction from the defendant when the guilty verdict was delivered, but there were gasps from the public gallery where members of his family were sitting. Paul died in hospital on the same night Peter witnessed him being attacked. He never regained consciousness after suffering a fractured skull and died within 4 hours. A police inquiry was launched at the time after bruises and burns were found on the boy, but Dearlove was never prosecuted. That changed in 2015 when Peter Booth, incensed after seeing a photo on Facebook of his little brother sitting on Dearlove's knee, went to the police. It led to the former ICI worker being arrested at home in Great Yarmouth, Norfolk, and being questioned in Middlesbrough. Dearlove was 21 when he moved in with Carol Booth, now deceased, and her 3 children, and told the jury he liked them but did not love them. She went on to have a baby son by him, born 3 months after Paul died. The couple split in 1970 and he never saw Peter again until Mr. Booth faced him in court and told the jury what he saw. Mr. Booth and his sister Stephanie also told the jury Dearlove had been physically abusive towards them when they were small children. Paul had a series of injuries of different ages on his body when he died. A month before, concerns were raised by his nursery about bruises on his body, and police and child care specialists made inquiries but did not take action against the couple. At the time, Dearlove told the authorities those injuries were caused by Paul pulling a motorbike over in the backyard. On the night Dearlove killed Paul, he was alone in the room with the child. He claimed the toddler had collapsed and went with Mrs. Booth in the ambulance to the hospital, returning home sometime later while the toddler remained critically ill. He heard in a phone call that Paul was dead. An hour and a quarter after hearing the news, he told the jury, he went to bed. October 1968, toddler Paul Booth dies after being found lifeless at his home. Early 1990s, his brother says he went to Billingham Police Station on Teesside to report stepfather's murder. He says he was not contacted by officers after making the report. Early zeros, brother says he went to Burgess Hill Police Station in Sussex, but again his claims were not acted on. January 2015, brother went to Haywards Heath Police Station to report the murder but was referred to Cleveland Police. Later in 2015, brother sees photos of accused and victim on Facebook. He tells a cousin who contacts police. This time, Cleveland police investigate and Dearlove is questioned and later charged. November 2017, Dearlove found guilty of murder. Dearlove showed little emotion when he was cross-examined by Richard Wright QC, prosecuting, about that night. Mr. Wright asked, "The child you say you cared about and liked, a baby, had died in your home that night. It must have been terrible." Dearlove said, "I cannot remember what my feelings were." Mr. Wright said, "Think back, this happy little baby you had been tossing up and down by the fire earlier in the evening, you found him with a fatal injury, and the woman you loved, Carol, had just lost her son. Was that a bit upsetting?" Dearlove replied, "It was probably upsetting, yes, but I cannot remember." In graphic evidence, a baby doll was marked up with the different injury sites and shown to the jury. Home Office pathologist Dr. Mark Egan then hit the doll's head on a hard surface to show how the skull fracture could have been caused. Dearlove, who had no previous convictions, moved to London after his split with Mrs. Booth, and started a new life. He married, had 2 daughters and is now a grandfather. A baby doll was used as a graphic piece of evidence to convict David Dearlove of murder almost 50 years after the act. The resuscitation mannequin was marked with blue pen to show the bruises and burns that were found on toddler Paul Booth at his post-mortem examination in October 1968. As well as marks on elsewhere on his body, there were bruises on his feet and around his neck, and the jury heard these were not the usual places a small child would hurt themselves accidentally in play. Home Office pathologist Mark Egan used the doll to demonstrate how he thought Paul could have died by swinging the doll by the ankles and banging its head on the surface of the witness box. Some of the 10 women and 2 men on the jury wept when they saw the demonstration. Dr. Egan told Teesside Crown Court he believed it would have taken separate blows to cause the shaped skull fracture on the side of Paul's head. The jury heard expert evidence that the array of injuries on Paul's body indicated they were not accidental, but were caused by someone in the house. Dearlove had told the jury that Carol Booth was a good mother to the children and she did not hurt them. Richard Wright QC, prosecuting, asked him, who was hurting Paul? Dearlove replied, "I don't know,